Do you find that now most of your time is on marketing rather than on your core business? And is that a problem, or is that part of the business plan?
Well, we're marketing our core business. So the market, I use marketing to get the business, and then we have teams who do the work. Yeah. Is that what you mean? Or, you say,
I suppose it's when you were talking about going to all these conferences, and
yes.
it feels like, for you as a director, you must be spending most of your time doing that rather than thinking about design. So you've almost become the marketing director. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, our marketing is through conferences. That's the marketing of the business, and that's what I personally do 60% of my time, and I do work on some projects on strategy, yeah.
Okay.
But only a few.
That's a good approach, I approve.
I am a designer, though.
Hi, another question for Ibrahim. You talked a bit about provocations as a way of sort of getting your ideas out there. It's something my company tried a bit, especially when we were quite a lot younger. There tends to be, you have to be quite careful when you're doing that, because obviously you're sometimes picking sides in arguments that exist within each sector, or sometimes you're alienating clients who previously have supported certain positions. So could you give us an example of a provocation that you've used kind of successfully that's, kind of helped aid your business and move your brand forward?
Impromptu discussion. Okay, so we one of our core business is airports. We work a lot in airports around the world, and airports have got mainly three stakeholders. They have the airport operator, they have the retail operators, and they have the FMCG, the fast-moving consumer brands in the airport. Three stakeholders, and the big elephant in the room that no one talks about is when Amazon, or when you have full in-flight internet. A lot of shopping that happens in airports potentially go in flight. And if you look at the stats, more than 60% of revenue of airports actually comes from non-aviation. It comes from retail. So it's really, really on the edge of being disrupted. But the whole thing's a monopoly. It's a monopoly of, it's an oxymoron. There's 4 companies that control the whole world, or 80% of the world's retail in airports. And it's very difficult to enter it. And we believe that they won't be around after the next 4 or 5 years because of that, or not around in that guise. And therefore, it's disrupting the whole revenue model. And every time we go to conferences, it's just a backslapping exercise. Everyone's saying we've got millions and millions of passengers coming in. Well, actually, only 18% of passengers that go to airports shop. Only 18%. Passenger numbers are going up by 7%. Retail sales are flat. So they're all failing. But they're making millions of pounds, but they're failing in terms of they're failing customers and they're failing their landlords, i.e. the airport. And we talk about this very, very openly. And we've never been busier in airports.
Can I ask you a question as well to pick up on that? Because I still haven't got my head quite around this. I still haven't quite got my head, and I think it's a bit like maybe what you were suggesting. So you give insights about the airport, the one that you were just talking about, but then how does that lead on to doing design work, or do you just not do design work anymore?
No. Our business is design. We're a designer. We use the provocation to get design work.
Yeah.
The provocation is our marketing.
Yeah. So how do you get from one to the other? That's what I don't quite...
Well, that's the point. So
saying,
the conversation starts with, that's just an example. I'm just showing you, asked for an example, but the conversation starts with an insight, with a provocation. Go and have a conversation, not about, respond to this RFP and how much is it going to cost, what are your deliverables, but let's have a conversation about the issues that will affect the brief. Now, often, more and more often, we then get engaged to frame the brief for the RFP and write the RFP. That's the impact it's had. And we've done 3 recently. So it's absolutely, unapologetically a way of getting business. But I really passionately believe in our industry, to stop and to prevent the commoditization of our industry, we've got to add value beyond being in the beauty parade business. And I based, I say me, there's 40, 50 of us, but I bought the business and I based my whole personal investment on it. I could have lost everything. And absolutely, completely shifted the strategy of the business because I thought it was going wrong, and that was 9 years ago.
In your presentation, you talked about the 7 different client types, and you listed which ones were the mobilizers and the teachers, but you left out blockers. And how do you address those clients when you're faced with, maybe an entity or a stakeholder that is the blocker, and can you transform those people into teachers or mobilizers?
No, we don't. What we do is that we get much more influential and closer to the teachers, and we get them to identify. In fact, they often identify to us who the blockers are because they're blocking things internally. But to be truthful, if it's in the majority, the blockers get kind of sidelined really, mostly. But we don't try and kind of influence them directly. No, we keep to our allies.
Both of you have talked a lot about kind of, I guess, outward-facing communication. And I think probably for a lot of people in this room, their influence would be partly external, beyond their practice to clients, but quite a lot of it might also be about exerting influence within the context of a mainly large practice. I think most of this audience come from large practices. Are there any lessons that are kind of applicable more on a kind of day-to-day basis in terms of having impact or influence within the context of the actual business itself?
For me, it goes back to the leadership challenges, that if you want to be a leader, and it doesn't matter if you're the leader, but you want to type of show yourself in your practice as a leader, then there's lots of type of C's around it, the clarity and communication. But there's also a lot about your own competency and I think being consistent. So there's lots of behaviours, and I think we've covered a lot of this afternoon. You have to work on yourself, and I think that's a constant sort of challenge for us all. You have to work on yourself and not be scared of yourself. Don't hold yourself back. So presenting is just a part of it, but it goes back to this idea of presenting with purpose and having a core. You need to know where you're going, what you're doing, and this has come up again and again. Be yourself, but you have to think, well, who am I? And that's quite a difficult thing to come up with. So I'm sorry, getting a bit existential here, but I do think that you have to, work on yourself.
I think you've touched on the most important point, actually, and that all this starts internally. It can't be driven externally. It's got to start internally. It's your internal engagement and getting your team to think in a way and to approach discussions, conversations with clients in a different way. And so in order to deliver that, we've got a head of insights who's one of his objectives is to influence internally all the team around the insight that we have, the research that we do. So the team are part of the research. So we haven't got a research team that goes out and does the research and comes back and briefs the designers. The designers are part of the ethnography that we do with consumers direct. So they get a real first-hand understanding of the insight. I think you cannot do this unless you have a learning environment, an insight environment, an environment that is about debating. We do a lot of insight. We have a lot of insight tools that we use with clients. We go to different sort of workshops and safaris and things, but we do all those internally as well, before doing it to the client or afterwards. So absolutely, it's all driven from internal. And just one other example, we're arranging some public speaking courses to about 10 people in the team. And one of the briefs to the person is to train, if you can train this, of how, once you're in a conversation with a client, how you can break out into impromptu kind of serendipitous stories, although planted, but make it sound as though you're telling a story which is relevant to them because you've come across it. I mean, hopefully we're going to make sure people do come across those stories, those great things that we've seen, or those great insights through research, but drop them into conversation. Don't just present page after page after page of your design work. Get away from your comfort blanket of your portfolio and start talking about real issues that concern the client, that makes them think, I want to be in that gang.
Do you think it's necessary to be somewhat of an extrovert to sort of be successful in this future world that you've described?
I think that's for,
that for me?
you, Ibrahim. Yeah.
Either.
No, no, absolutely not. If anything, I think it's really, really boring being an extrovert. I think it's all about being yourself. One of my colleagues, Lewis, is amazing. You'll be in a client meeting or in a big Q&A, and he won't say anything. He doesn't say anything till right at the end, and the tension builds, and everyone just waits for what Lewis is going to say. And he says it in 4 words, and he's a really shy guy, but he's amazingly talented and very, very bright. So and that's him. So he's just basically doing what he does naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought a lot about this being extrovert, and I think you, obviously it's about being yourself, but isn't there a lot about, I don't know, playing, you change through your career, don't you? You sort of become something different the whole time. So at 1 minute you're on Instagram and you are this extrovert, but then another minute you're something else. So you can be all sorts of different things all your life, and I think that's, actually makes things rather exciting. So the extrovert, introvert, when you go on those management courses, they say you're this type of personality or that type of personality. I type of find that slightly cramping, and I reject that sort of putting people in categories. So I think, I don't know, you can be what you want to be, really, can't you? You're an extrovert one day, but the next day you're an introvert. So I sort of don't think they're that helpful, that type of thing. It stops you becoming what you can be,
Did you stay in the cupboard till the end, or did you walk out?
4 hours, I was in there for
No.
4 hours. No, I came straight out.
Thank you. It's for Ibrahim. How do you prove the credibility of your insights to your clients?
It's funny. Just a little anecdote. I did a presentation to Lendlease about 6 years ago, and I was going to present to their board of directors, or their board, and the marketing director was facilitating this, and he wanted to go through my presentation. So he went through and he goes, yeah, great. These 2 slides, I'll take them out. They're just, it's like, they won't get it. That was quite a while ago. They were QR codes, those slides. They were QR codes. They didn't sort of see that insight about what were QR codes in those days, what could it do. I mean, to answer your question then, is that you can't, that it's proved in time. If you make predictions, you make insights, you make provocations, it can only be proved whether it's wrong or right. On the one hand. On the other hand, in our world, consumers are always right. It's what the consumers want. And we do ethnography, we do deep research, and we understand, our insights don't come from the air. They're a response to an insight that we get from consumers, or in fact, internal audiences as well.
I think it's just following on from that last point you made about the research that, yes, your insights, but you deliberately withhold the research. So you offer the insights, but you if I understand you correctly, you sort of hold back quite a lot of the information that you perhaps have.
No. I'm sorry if I've not explained it properly. No, we do the research like many businesses do, and we capture the insight from that research. We don't necessarily go through the whole process of the research. We just see where the insight is, where the nuggets are, and how it informs what we're trying to do, what we call the human truths, and share those. And the interpretation of those is up for grabs, really. We interpret it, the client interprets it.
Can you give us an example of that? Because I'm really interested in that bit, and you talked about it in your talk, but I don't want to put you on the spot, but just one example of what you mean by the human truth. Say a nugget from Twitter, for example.
No, that's something different. That's social media. What I'm talking about is researching consumers. Yeah. So, do you want me to give you an actual example?
Yeah, no,
okay.
Just
So, Dove soap, Dove, the brand. So Dove is positioned by Procter & Gamble as a beauty product. All the communication is all about beauty, and then some research was done, where it's really, really kind of getting into people's homes and an observational research, real sort of deep ethnography, and it was found that most consumers put the Dove soap under the sink, or Dove product under the sink with the detergents. And then this video was shown to Procter & Gamble, saying, so you think it's a beauty product. So that's a human truth. Now, if you ask consumers in a quant survey or in even a focus group, yeah, it's beautiful because they're responding to the advertising. But so, there's a great adage that says, I used to think, now I do market research. So it's really sort of getting into the deep truth of what actually is.
And you take that to that.
Yeah, it's a video. And you say, there's the evidence. Yeah. It's not our opinion. But the consumers can't tell them that. And that's just one example. I mean, that's irrelevant, I'm sure, to a lot of what you do. But yeah. Yeah. There's many more.
Do we have any more questions from the floor? Well, I'd just like to thank Jane and Ibrahim for a very insightful afternoon. And I'm just going to attempt to sum up what I've heard. Actually, our speakers and the programming have made it very easy because there's been a huge amount of synthesis over the course of the afternoon in terms of the messages you've heard. I do hope you're going to go away today with some really kind of practical tools as well for developing your personal brand, getting noticed online, writing to win clients, presenting with purpose, and communicating with insight. But I think for me, the kind of main message I've come away with today really is about really making that conscious connection between who you are as a unique person and your professional reputation and your professional work. And this is really about making a connection with other individuals, your clients, and your audiences. So I guess our ask to you this afternoon is to get out of the cupboard and advocate for yourself, for your practice, and for the profession. I hope we're going to see you all on the 18th of July for the final session in the Future Leaders series, Business and Innovation, which will be followed by an evening drinks reception. Thank you very much.